Back, everybody. Downward Dogma. You're here with Jennie and Tasha. And we're getting into some real interesting topics here, and we've covered a lot of bases. And I wanted to talk a little bit more about what our main title was today, which was Trump, the Toddler in Chief. And last week we talked about bullies and corporate bullies and their manipulation moves and their control tactics and what have you. Is there anything in particular you talked a little bit about Trump. Is there anything else you want to discuss about Trump, since that was kind of our main topic, and then we can move into a couple other things?
Well, I think if we're talking about Trump and a bully, I mean, he's definitely the largest bully that we have in our mainstream media these days. But even so, I think that as far as the psychology that we like to talk about on our show, even with him and his bully tactics, there has to be understanding and compassion towards the fact of these people work out of their ego. And we believe them to be adults, so we think that we can, say, don't you think that, we could do things this way and it'll be better? Or do you realize that you're injuring other people when you do this? Narcissists, they don't understand that because they cannot see it or feel it. I mean, I personally believe that narcissists have closed heart chakras. So they're incapable of being empathetic, which really is the sign of a bully, somebody that, can't empathize with another person and how their behavior is affecting others. And I think with Trump, that's really something that we need to pay attention to, because we have one side that's all up in arms over his behavior and, his hateful speech and all of the other things that is Trump. But he doesn't know any better. And we have a lot of, we just think that people can do better when they actually don't know how to do better. And I think that's really unfortunate in our society, because how are we going to make change unless we're able to teach people how to be better?
Brilliant. I love that. And I want to emphasize on that. I do believe it's not just narcissists. You could be just a rather self-involved individual, maybe even a little bit selfish, and you're working with a closed heart chakra. So we have to allow people and meet them and let them be how they are, meet them where they're at, because why would we expect someone who's coming in with heavy karmic duties like being a narcissist and expect them to act like us? We're not being open. And sure, you don't want to spend a bunch of time with a narcissist, but that's the learning. It's not don't be a narcissist. It's I don't really like to hang out with narcissists. I'm going to try to not expose myself to them very often. Now, when you have the President of the United States being a narcissist, this is big learning, and it's bringing it to the mainstream. I like how you said that. He's the biggest in mainstream right now. So going back to when Trump won, being a psychic, I was like, this has a lot more movement in it than Hillary becoming president. And my spirit guides are like, do you want to know why that is? And I'm like, yes, I do. And they were like, well, Hillary would be same old, right? Not too many ripples, but no movement, not a lot of motion in the ocean, meaning it would have been a little more calm and a little more of the same old. But, and this is what the big piece was, and you touched on it a little bit earlier, Trump was going to bring to the table things that needed to be healed that Hillary wouldn't have, because it would have been more calm and same old. Trump was going to bring some stuff to the table that no one could ignore anymore. And that's when a lot of healing, especially collectively, happens, is when you get a huge, gigantic, simultaneous slap in the face. And right. So it's big learning. So when he won presidency, I went back to work the next day, and all the girls I work with were real mad at me because I was not mad that Trump was president. And I say, you know what? This is going to bring more awareness and things that need to be healed to the table than Hillary or Obama or anyone could have at any time. So what I see is big growth. So yeah, the human ego doesn't like to think about a narcissist being in charge, but from a spiritual perspective, it's what we need to see to bring the awakening of where we are now. Look what happened. Trump won presidency, Weinstein got brought to the table, and then the Me Too movement happened, and then it flung into women being involved a lot more in politics than ever before, in my opinion, or at least desiring to be in that position of a politician. So, that was a huge movement, and it all happened from ego. And what you were talking about earlier, the oldest story in the book, Good versus Ego, every time heart energy comes up, ego is right behind. It's the process of it. It's the MO. So when every time ego comes up, you see a bunch of heart energy come. And you can see it when President Obama won presidency. That was a big flush of heart energy. But then you had all the naysayers the next day. N-word this, N-word this, hang them from the pole, blah, blah, blah. Well, that's ego's MO. When the heart energy surges, the ego's going to surge right next to it. Same with ego. The heart will surge right next to it. So we're kind of in this constant battle, and it's rather interesting, don't you think?
I think it's very interesting. I like to look at it like protons and how, like a proton, what is it? Like the light or the darkness absorbs the light, and then the light comes out the other side. And however, the difference in frequency is how much the neuron rises. Neuron. That was a bad example when I can't use my brain. But anyways, however much the light goes through it is how much the frequency rises and then falls. So you're actually raising the frequency every time the light comes in contact with the darkness, even if the darkness still exists.
Sure, but you're getting practice and building muscles and getting stronger and stronger and stronger. And in my understanding of reincarnation, that's kind of what we do. We pepper ourselves through history so we can build a stronger push before you know it. We're peaking out and overtaking, so to speak.
Right, like biodensity, like those machines where you build up your bone mass.
I've never heard of one. It builds up bone mass.
Yes, and yeah, that's what it is. It's a machine where, you do leg lifts or whatever, but it's the constant pressure that builds up the strength.
Well, isn't that a microcosm of what the world is? Oh, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. It is exactly what it is. And that's for each human being. If we looked at our life like that, all of our trials and tribulations, if we looked at it as it was just building our strength, we would all fare a lot better. Agreed.
Absolutely. I want to spend a couple minutes talking about some more conspiracies that I've come across with some of the candidates, and I'm going to throw them up in the air and see what you think about them, Tasha. So, Bloomberg, I think he's a Satanist. I think he's a billionaire Satanist. I got some images from my spirit guides that he was doing ritual, and I'll just leave it at that. I also think that Pete Buttigieg is at the beginning stages of moving into what I would consider satanic energy, or the 1%, or whatever you want to call it, the powers that be. So I feel like Pete is like being primed to be some sort of democratic little pawn, if you will. So I think that he's a decent person. He's a mayor of South Bend, Indiana. I'm just a couple hours north from there, from where I'm from. So I can give him some respect of where he's chose to start his political career, because it's no joke. It's high volume crime. And so I can respect that, but I do feel like some of the powers that be have got their claws in him already, and they're already shaping him. Think Hillary Clinton. So those are the two that I was like, we can't do this. So I do feel like Bernie doesn't sit with the establishment. I don't feel like he's manipulated, but in very many ways by the powers that be. And you can see that by the media's hate for him, and how they've even rumored that they put Bloomberg in there to pull votes away from Bernie to not get him to run or to get him out of there just because they're so afraid of socialism or whatever. But
right.
any opinions on either one of those candidates?
Well, it seems to me that Bloomberg is the one that's being campaigned the most in media. I mean, on my YouTube app and things like that, Bloomberg's the one that's always coming up.
It's true.
So I would say that he most likely is definitely part of some sort of conspiracy, because I believe that all candidates pretty much are part of a conspiracy.
Sure.
You know, I try to give Bernie leeway because of the fact that he's been in it for so long and has stood in integrity, that there has to be something different about him than the masses of the politicians.
I agree.
Because I don't see others standing in their integrity for that long of a span. So
agreed.
I think that there's something special about Bernie, whether he makes it or not. I believe that he definitely had purpose to rise the younger generations into paying attention, because he's definitely the ones that the younger crowds are looking at and going. In fact, I don't think any of the people that are in their 20s to 30s that are on my Facebook, none of them have any other political candidates except Bernie. That's the only person I see in the younger generations besides people that are supporting Trump. So I would definitely say that beyond any winning for Bernie, he has completely revolutionized politics for the younger generations.
Agreed. And I think it's so funny because they'll say you got all the millennials voting for a boomer, and then you have all the boomers voting for the millennial, Pete Buttigieg, because he's more conservative and what have you. And I just thought that was a funny mix. I had the opportunity to go hang out with a couple of millennials the other day, and they were really evolved into radio and music and politics. And I was sitting with them, and I was like, you know, we got a special weapon. And they're like, what's that? And we're talking about politics, Bernie, the whole 9 yards. I go, you guys are our weapon. You got the numbers, and the baby boomers are dying. You guys like Bernie, we're winning. It's just how the numbers go. And they're like, really? You think we're a secret weapon in that way? I'm like, it's the numbers. You got those masses, and you're, like you said, Bernie's kind of revolutionized how they think of politics, which is brilliant. So they're being moved by a philosophy, which is great, which is how every revolution and movement happens. But they were like, but let us tell you something. I'm like, yeah. They're like, you might not know any, but there's a generation under us, Generation Z, and he had a nickname for them. He called them Zoomers or something. And he had said that they all use the same sign-in account because they don't want to be tracked by the government. And I was like, wait a minute. I go, they're getting more radical the younger they are? He goes, that's why they're our secret weapon. I'm like, the new and improved Terminators. So you can see this generational healing. You see the hippies giving that big spike and like, raw. And then you get our generation coming through in the 90s being like, we're not buying any of this. And then you get the millennials with these big numbers being like, you destroyed the economy, boomers. We have to fix it. We're getting this Jew in there. And then you get the Zoomers or Zoomies, I think it's Zoomers, being like, we don't want them tracking us at all. We're going to all share the same sign-in, email, something other. I didn't make total sense of it because I'm not a computer person, but they're leaving no traces. They're leaving no tracks. They know and are onto the government and are already going against it. And I was like, oh, shit. We've won.
That's fantastic.
We've won.
Yeah. There's no more conspiracy of Big Brother. It's obvious that Big Brother exists now.
True. We've finally held space with that conspiracy long enough for the truth to be shown. As a Buddha said, the only thing, many things can stay hidden except the moon, the sun, and the truth, or something like that. And I'm like, that's true. But it always goes too fast, and of course we could go on and on and on about these topics. But I want to thank everyone for showing up. Check out our archived shows at Blog Talk Radio, Third Eye Political Radio. And we are Downward Dogma. You'll notice that there's a lot of other shows. with our network, go ahead and take a listen to them. They're going to be talking about similar things. So we appreciate you all for showing up. We're here Tuesdays, 2 p.m. Mountain Standard Time. That's 4 p.m. Eastern. And we appreciate you all, and thank you so much, Tasha. We'll see you next week.
Thank you so much.
Yeah. Bye-bye, everyone.